I really don't think I had it. I don't think that's the case. But I can say for certain that the bizarre dreams that frequently woke me up with my own screaming, well, they went away after I went through some of these sessions, and now they seem to have gone away forever. But unsupervised, that is, without some kind of experienced, hopefully professional help, MDMA may not be that great of an idea. Believe me, in my case, I know for sure that it can be a great party drug. In fact, since there was no information about it when I first started using it, I seriously abused it. Seriously. Until it didn't work at all in any dose, and believe me, I tried some dangerously large ones. So I stopped completely for 2 years, tried again, but nothing, not even a tingle. So I stopped for 7 more years and tried it again. And then, like magic, it was almost as good as the first time. And after that, I never used it more than 2 or 3 times a year, and it worked perfectly every time. Now, it's been a really long time now since I've used it, so I'm sure it would work well, even though I once was almost a daily user. But now I avoid it because of the body load. One thing I've learned with aging is that it is even more important to listen to your body as you get older. And when your grinding teeth and the second day drop or lull or whatever you call it begin to get to you, well, maybe it's time to move on to greener pastures, like ayahuasca, for example, or one of the other bold-faced chemicals in the index. Now, before I run out of steam for today, I'd like to mention a thread from our forum over on thegrowreport.com. It comes from one of our fellow saloners who goes by the handle Impermanence, and he brings up a really good point, one that once we get past the semantics is something that I probably should bring up here. So thank you in advance, Impermanence. I appreciate your candor. And I'm not going to read the entire thread, but I will read part of how Impermanence began it, and then a few bits of the responses. But if this topic interests you, I recommend that you go to the Psychedelic Salon forum on thegrowreport.com and look for the thread titled A Bone to Pick with Lorenzo. Here's how it begins. The bone I have to pick is regarding Lorenzo's opinion of cannabis being non-addictive. Sure, cannabis is not physically addictive, and you may have had no physical withdrawal symptoms, but it is without a doubt incredibly mentally addictive. And I, for one, have suffered physical withdrawal symptoms every time I've tried to give up cannabis. Now let me interrupt right here so I can get my little semantic thing out of the way. And that has to do with the word addictive. The reason I want to clear the air on that term first is because the rest of what Impermanence has to say is something I think we should take very seriously. But here's my problem with the word addiction. And I confess to being a disciple of Jonathan Ott on this. I don't have the time to go into it in detail right now, but eventually I'll play one of his talks about what it really means to be addicted. But just to give you something to chew on, how come here in the States, where coffee breaks are actually written into labor contracts, and where almost everyone has several cups of coffee each and every single day, how come we don't mention the fact that all of these people are addicted to caffeine? Because that is, in fact, exactly what they are. And if somebody who drinks 2 or more cups of coffee a day claims that they aren't addicted, well, tell them to quit cold turkey and give you a call around the 4th or 5th day and let you know how they're doing with their withdrawal symptoms. Now take the same case with daily cannabis smoker, toker, or vaporizer, and they'll call you to say that they haven't had a single physical symptom of withdrawal. My point being somewhat anally technical, but until coffee drinkers admit that they are addicts, and see how bad that word sounds? Until those coffee addicts admit their dependency, I don't think us cannabis users should give up any ground and allow ourselves to be called an addict, even if we are using a non-medical phrase like mentally addictive. Now, I do know what you're talking about, Impermanence, but I feel quite strongly that we shouldn't open the door to creating any more negative impressions of the psychedelic community than necessary. We're perfectly capable of doing that in many more creative ways. Anyway, if we get rid of the addict thoughts and go with something like serious psychological dependency or something like that, then the rest of Impermanence posts really resonates with me. And in point of fact, Impermanence makes the same point a couple of days later when he said, maybe I shouldn't be using the word addictive. What I should be saying is I have a psychological dependence to cannabis. And I think he also mentioned that he was a little drunk when he made his original post, which I'll continue reading now. I'm a 29-year-old male who has been smoking cannabis since the tender age of 12. I can't give up. In Ireland, it's mostly indica hash from Afghanistan that we get on the street. I've been smoking this shit my whole life. I love it, and I'm miserable without it. I suffer headaches without hash. I can't sleep. I'm incredibly moody, in fact, intolerable. I will drink myself into oblivion if I can't get sorted for hash or weed. But I always do. I get sorted and continue living in my hazy bubble. Without cannabis, my central nervous system goes to overdrive. I become erratic and inconsolably moody and depressed. I have turned to smoking heroin on many occasions when I couldn't get cannabis over the last few years. I'm not alone in my addiction. I have seen cannabis destroy the lives of many friends, rob the strong ones of their passion and motivation, and leave them a shell of what they once were, and lead the weak ones into heroin addiction. I've seen them die. It began with an addiction to cannabis. I think Lorenzo is living in a fantasy world sometimes. I want to believe it, but on the streets of Dublin, cannabis is not some fucking fairy tale. It's just relief from stress. And if abused through unprepared or immature minds, it comes with a heavy price. I never mentioned my struggle with psychosis that's left me agoraphobic for 10 years, thanks largely to cannabis. I'm hoping ayahuasca will help me deal with that because giving up cannabis is not in the cards. I would rather die than never smoke a joint again. Now tell me cannabis is not addictive. Well, as you might suspect, this original post led to quite a few responses. And a few thoughts I had began with remembering the alcoholic haze I lived in before I found psychedelics. And as an aside note to our fellow saloners from the DEA and other agencies of note who may think I just replaced one vice for another, well, maybe you're right. But from where I stand, I feel it's much healthier for me to participate in a few ayahuasca ceremonies each year and smoke a joint from time to time than it was to drink myself into a stupor every day. And in a way, it sounds like Impermanence was doing more than his or her share of drinking. And as for being agoraphobic for 10 years, he says thanks largely to cannabis, well, maybe you should have quit buying that indica and tried a little Jack Herer instead. Seriously. But another little trick that I've discovered that might help you daily tokers out there is to begin each day with a little list of things that you absolutely intend to get done for the day. And do this before your first toke. Then toke all you want as long as your list is getting checked off. But if you miss getting everything done that day, then you don't allow yourself to toke at all the next day. And if you're serious about that promise to yourself, then you'll be surprised how much work you can get done while you're stoned. You know, the old carrot and stick program. That said, getting into the rut of being stoned every day isn't a bed of roses from a psychological point of view, and over the long term can be very detrimental. And I should probably interject here that both Ann and Sasha Shulgin strongly warn against heavy use of cannabis, and in fact, neither of them are fond of it personally. On the other hand, I admit that cannabis is my closest ally. Yet, very interestingly, the spirit of that plant, if you get to know it well and listen closely, will let you know when it's time to back off. Just a few months back, I found it quite fascinating that, along with myself, almost a dozen or so of my friends, almost spontaneously, and all without talking to one another beforehand, well, we all went on a break, an indefinite hiatus from using that wonderful plant. And I think that most of us didn't use it again for several months, just quit cold turkey, because it seemed like the right thing to do at the moment. In fact, I can remember thinking during my hiatus that I might not ever even want to use it again. And in fact, I realized that I didn't need to. But, of course, eventually I dusted off the old doctor's recommendation and stopped by the local dispensary once again, mainly because it was getting too painful to sit at my computer for more than an hour or so a day. But after I started back once again, I realized how much I missed the feeling the way I feel when I'm high. Now, let's be honest here. We humans have been altering our consciousness long before we even figured out how to brew beer. If you watch, you'll see even little children spinning themselves around in small circles just to get dizzy and get that feeling of being high.